Thanks everyone for coming. Welcome to LinkedIn. How many of you have been here before? A few of you? A bunch of you. Awesome. Well, really excited to have our panelists here today. Our topic today is how smaller companies are attracting top talent. As you know, it's really easy to find examples of larger companies that are not having any problems attracting top talent. So we thought it would be really nice for you guys to be able to hear from a couple of HR leaders at smaller companies who are doing a great job attracting talent and have some great experiences to share. And to my left, I have Tim Betry, HR Director at DemandBase, and Brian Breth, HR Director of TA at Rubicon Project. So thank you both for being here.
Thank you. Thank you.
My name is Avani Khanna, and I'm a talent brand consultant here at LinkedIn. So I partner with our customers on talent brand strategy, and I'll be your moderator today. In terms of agenda and format, we have this panel which will go for the next 45 minutes or so, and then followed by additional networking and refreshments. And please stick around because at 3:50 we're going to be giving away a ticket to Talent Connect. Must be present to win, and other fine print. It's definitely happening, so stay for that. I'm really glad to have you. Yeah, off we go. So in terms of the panel, I have some questions that we'll go through because I want you guys to get some good understanding around certain areas that I think we'll get some insight into, and then we will open it up for Q&A. And we have some folks on the left and the right who are ready to take your questions. So I would ask you each to introduce yourself and just give a little background on kind of what you bring to your role today.
Sure, I'll start. Yeah. So Tim Betry, Director of Talent Acquisition and HR. So I manage the recruitment function at DemandBase. I started at DemandBase 3 years ago. We're about 60 employees, and we are currently over 250. We're based at 3rd and Folsom, and we have offices in Seattle and New York, with also a couple folks in the UK as well. I currently run a team of 3, and I also function within greater HR as well, but more so on the performance side. And yeah, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for joining.
My name is Brian Breth. I'm the Director of Talent Acquisition at Rubicon Project. We're a technology company that automates the buying and selling of advertising. We're about a 500-person company. I've been with the company now for a little over 4 years, and I head the function globally. I have a global team. I have people in LA, New York, and London. And you know, it's been interesting because I joined the team when the company was pre-IPO in 2013, the beginning of the year, and we were at 233 employees then. And since then, we've gone public. We've acquired 3 companies. We got up to north of 750 employees. Last year was a very challenging year for us. We're back down to 500 employees. So it's been quite a ride in that time and managing our brand and our resources.
Great. So what would you each say are the biggest challenges to attracting talent to your organization?
I would say in the Bay Area specifically, I think we're all challenged with the same recruitment challenge, which would be hiring and retaining top engineers. I would say data science and full stack engineers are going to be the future of, or the current and the future of the tech industry, and it's super important to stay on top of recruitment branding as well as making sure that you're remaining competitive among the Googles, the Facebooks, and the LinkedIns of the world. Beyond that as well, I think making sure that our company is maintaining its position as the pioneer in account-based marketing, so we're a B2B company, and staying innovative and keeping a culture that's been unique to DemandBase since inception. Those are some of the core areas.
I would echo, for us too, it's always been a challenge getting people to the front door. We don't have the level of brand equity that a Facebook or a Google has, where it's not an issue. once we get people in the front door, we can, it's very easy for us to speak to our value proposition and get somebody excited about working at Rubicon Project. So for us, it's been really about investing in more top of funnel activities so that we can attract people, educate people about who we are, our industry. You know, outside of within the ad tech industry, you say Rubicon Project, people know who you are. They know the company. Outside, you know, we compete with the likes of Google and Facebook. And so for us, we don't have the luxury of, you know, many larger corporations can probably afford to pay lower because people want to come and just get that name on their resume. So for us, we not only have to attract people, but it's also paying them, you know, especially with engineers, paying them at, you know, 75th or even 90th percentile in order to get them.
So Brian, what are some strategies that have been effective for Rubicon Project in attracting those engineers?
There've been a lot, because when I started with the company, there was no talent acquisition team, no recruiting function. I was the first person that they ever hired that was a recruiter. So there were, before even getting to the point where we could have conversations about branding, it was really educating the business on the value that talent acquisition can bring beyond, you know, being an order taker. Because the way that the business was relating to the function up until that point was that since there was no function, they were using, you know, recruiting agencies exclusively. So their relationship to recruiters was, you know, here, and give me some fries with that. You know, so it was sort of educating them beyond, you know, what we could provide in a recruiting capacity, but also you know, having them get like, here are all the things that you need to do outside of us just filling jobs for you, right? Because at the end of the day, the business doesn't know what good looks like. And so it's up to us to teach them what good looks like. So some of the things that we did early on after we were to establish ourselves to a certain point where we could then have a conversation about talent branding. You know, it was making investments in, you know, different sites where we could distribute content. And when I say content, I mean like, you know, pictures that showcased offices, where we could upload content that talked about the company, our benefits, what our value proposition is. So getting those distribution points in place, whether it was LinkedIn or Glassdoor or the Muse, what have you. And then from there, you know, how do we want to use those distribution points, and how else are we pushing content out? Oh, it's via Instagram and Snapchat. Okay, well, what do we want to put out that way? So those are some of the really simple ways that we started to kind of get ourselves out there. Because at the end of the day, you know, again, if you don't have that brand equity in the marketplace, then what do you talk about? Well, you talk about your culture, right? And you start to, you know, build a story around what it's like to work at your company, and you use that as a basis for the content that you push out.
Great. I'm hearing a lot of marketing savvy, just saying. You mentioned top of funnel. What did you mean by that?
So one of the things that we found, to no surprise really, is that, you know, we built our funnels, our candidate pipelines, when we open up recs, which basically has us be in a reactive state ongoingly throughout the year. So in order for us to get out of that rut, you have to do things that start to build the long term, that don't necessarily have those immediate returns, but over time do. So you start to see, like, you know, especially, you know, you talked about, Tim, you know, we have the same problem hiring engineers, right? You know, I remember reading a report from the Department of Labor. They did a study, and as of the end of last year, you know, the ratio of available talent to open jobs was like 1.4 to 1. And when you're hiring engineers, it's that much more competitive if that's the reality of the marketplace. And so from there, you've got to start to find a way to get people like in top of funnel. So what we did, you know, over the past 2 years was we started, again, using media campaigns in order to get more content out there. And we were in the news a lot. I mean, we were getting big business deals. We had leaders in the business who were writing thought pieces. And so we used those as ways to start to attract people and get interest so that people started either following us, or we had a lead capture campaign. And so they started submitting their information because they wanted us to contact them to learn more about the company and the opportunities. But it took time, and we didn't get there overnight. We started with some of those things that I was talking about earlier, about just doing it DIY, because a lot of times you don't necessarily have a marketing department to work with, which we didn't at the time in the beginning. So we were doing a lot of this stuff on our own, and then over time, as the company grew and we built out a more robust marketing function, a corporate communications team, we partnered with them, and they helped us create content that we would put out. Now we've got the corporate communications team, and they're helping us push content out in our media campaigns.
That's awesome. Tim, I'd love to hear about some of the strategies that have been successful for you, and maybe even something that hasn't been successful.
Yeah, sure. So first, when I joined DemandBase, similar to Brian, it was myself and a contractor, and we had such a small marketing function, but there wasn't a lot of brand equity. I knew DemandBase because my boss brought me on board, but other than that, I didn't know much of B2B marketing or account-based marketing. What we did is we had to completely transform our marketing presence online, and I needed to create that from scratch. But it was super cool because I was able to go on board, establish what is this culture like, what is the CEO all about, and how can we message this consistently across all different online channels. So whether that's LinkedIn, Glassdoor, Indeed, Stack Overflow, we were able to, I even got my cell phone, which is like a professional camera, and I snapped some photos from our culture events or our office or employees. I gathered a couple quotes from employees from different departments. So for our careers page, depending on the job that was posted, if it was marketing, I'd have a quote from a marketing professional. We created a video that was DIY as well. In general, what we tried to message is that we didn't need an expensive marketing campaign. We were able to put together a lot of the fundamental elements of what it's like to work at DemandBase. We created a hashtag, we shared, we had employees share about the company, and in that in itself, we were able to successfully attract candidates to the company. I think I'm fortunate enough where our CEO really supports recruiting. So one of the big strategic initiatives at the beginning of the year is we have 5 core pillars. It's marketing, revenue, our product eng, finance, and our people. Within the people function, recruiting is top of mind. So knowing that we have the executive support, we have the department lead support, hiring manager support, it's really a top-down approach to recruiting. So to Brian's point, it doesn't fall all on the recruiting team to say, hey, where are my candidates? Where are my people? No, this is all a collective effort. And as a group, we're able to work with we use Greenhouse as an ATS, Lever. There's a bunch of other application systems out there, but I got every single employee on board with that. Our corporate comm team now pushes out content on a weekly basis, and we leverage that to our advantage. But in the early days, I just had people set up their publisher setting. They shared our jobs on a weekly basis, and our referrals automatically jumped from 15 to 35% in a matter of weeks.
I liked what you said earlier, though, about setting up the fundamental base for your marketing activities, because that's really, I think that it's easy to, in the beginning, get discouraged because you see other companies who maybe have the resources, and really that's where you want to be, but you're not there, and it's hard to get there. And doing something is better than doing nothing. And like similarly, we created a hashtag, Join the Project. And again, it's just little ways to move the needle, because the other thing that gets in our way with a lot of these efforts is our core function, which is recruiting. And especially when it's, everybody's firing on all cylinders and you've got to hire, 90 people in 3 months, stuff like talent marketing and branding falls to the wayside. And so part of it too is also creating a way where you take small pieces of it rather than trying to tackle something that's a large to-do.
Yep, totally. And I would say also, there's little things like brand messaging. You don't need to create a super unique, edited company message. You can really, in the early days, you can ragtag and put together a quick blurb about your company, make it attractive, push it out, get feedback, change it, adjust. We're at a position now where we've had the same exact tagline for 2 years, and it's remained the same because we've kept the same core values and purpose at our company. So that, along with videos and pictures and engaging with the employees and advertising our positions, has been really the main reason for our big success across DemandBase in our recruiting function.
I love what you just said about the core values. Like, how much do you feel that that plays into what resonates with your target talent?
Yeah, it's one thing to go out and message, oh, we're a people-centric organization with transparency, and we're collaborative, and we're innovative. Everybody says the same exact thing. For me, it's about how you're conveying that through your message. So what about transparency? Well, our CEO hosts a town hall on a weekly basis. What about innovation? Our product and eng team gets up and they share wins. We let the market know about that. What about other elements of the company that we want to share, like cool outings, Pinot Fridays? Don't just say it, do it, and share that through your message. And that's the biggest thing with recruiting. It's sharing what it's like at your company and how to message that in a small ad campaign or in a job post or a job share.
Yeah, and more and more talent, I think, it's not attracting them by saying, well, what can you do for us? But I think that it's really switching around and saying, here's how our values line up with yours. Is really the shift that's happening.
Are there any strategies that you have tried that didn't work that you would maybe not try again? Yeah.
Yeah, good.
Just to spice it up a little bit.
Yeah, it's interesting. So we did all right, so DemandBase, we're a B2B marketing company, and we allow other businesses to target companies through IP identification. So similar to cookie-based targeting, we identify companies through IP addresses. And so on the topic of eating your own dog food, we ended up adopting a campaign to go after customer success managers using the DemandBase technology, which I encourage everybody, if you haven't used your own technology, if you're at a company where you can leverage it for your recruiting campaign, do it. It's a very cost-effective solution to be able to engage with candidates. But on that topic, though, we did a DemandBase campaign for customer success managers, and we spent a good amount of budget. And next thing we know, we filled the role through a referral 2 weeks later, but we spent all this money on ad campaigns, and it didn't really work out. So I would, in hindsight 2020, I would do a much larger stretch campaign for positions that we know are going to be a need for the company on an ongoing basis. And whether it's engineering or sales or just DemandBase in general, I would say try to build the top line funnel and make sure that you're consistently growing that and not stopping at any point in time.
Great. One of the threads I also heard from both of you that you kind of touched on but didn't go deeply into is the employee engagement piece. How much is that a part of your strategy, and how hard is it to do? Is it easy to do, hard to do? Do you need to be very resourced to do it?
Yeah.
How have you guys done that?
You have to look at, like we looked at how engaged the workforce was in the first place. And the first place we looked was where were we at with our referrals, right? And our team, they're very comfortable with speaking to our value proposition and talking to people. Right now, I think, we talk about engineering being a hard department to hire for. Last year, 30% of our engineering hires were from referral. That's a pretty good percentage. But we had to get there, and we've done, talk about things that worked and didn't work. I mean, talent branding and marketing is not exclusive to people outside of the company. You can also do it to get your employee base engaged. One of the things that we did, we created this monthly email called the Talent Show, and we would create like a minute to 2 minute video of what was going on, what the talent acquisition team was doing, what positions. We would showcase offices and things like that, and it definitely upped engagement. But talk about biting off more than you can chew, it was hard for us to maintain that because, again, we're hiring over 200 people a year with a team of like 4 people at one point. And so to do something like that on a monthly basis when you didn't really have marketing or communication support, it was tough. So we had to dial that back and figure out another way to engage the employee base. And what we ended up doing was just keeping it very simple. We leveraged our intranet more and use that as sort of a distribution point to get the message out about the referral program, current jobs that we had or jobs that we wanted to focus on and get referrals for. And that worked a lot better. And it still moved the needle. It wasn't as grand as having this monthly video, but it still moved the needle.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Yeah, for us, similar. We did a position of the month. So we would send out a monthly email with our positions, and then we would host one. Convenient. It's nice. We offer a 5,000 referral bonus, so that definitely helps with the social engagement factor and to get employees to at least care. But I do think having the executive team and the CEO and myself, I sound like a broken record sometimes, but I'm always telling employees to share our positions. And then going back to just the engagement factor, I think having managers and everybody in support and reminding employees to share our positions on an ongoing basis is going to be really important. Also with our town hall meetings, which are weekly, we do provide a Friend of HR award. So somebody who's been active in sharing our positions or had the most referrals for the month, we make sure that they get some recognition for that. And it does go a long way.
And are they sharing this on specific platforms? Like, how are they being asked to share it?
Yeah, so usually, usually it's LinkedIn, and I would say Twitter are going to be the big ones. We do have a Life at DemandBase hashtag that we use, and so that's going to be tied into everything we do. Also, I'll do some reports and tracking within Greenhouse as well. So we look at a number of reports.
That's great. Yeah, hashtags. Awesome. All right, well, I would love to open it up to the audience if there's any questions. Just signal Penny or Brandon who are standing there and they'll come by with a mic.
Hi, I'm Kristen with Revenate, a software company in Presidio. Thanks for coming. I do have a question about how you get unengaged managers really engaged in recruiting, and how you inspire them and make that a priority over everything else.
Start with that one. Want me to? Yeah. All right. So I think it is super important to get executive buy-in. I think that's going to be the biggest. But beyond that, I personally hold all managers accountable to the same standards, which is if you're going to work with recruiting and you want support for your team, then you need to dedicate the time to the resource that we're hiring for. We put together a full-fledged process where we meet with managers, and it's pretty much required. And if they don't do it, I've never had a manager not do it. So I set at least 15 to 30 minutes prior to engaging in any interviews, and we do a pre-interview meeting. We talk about the interview lineup, interview areas of focus, competencies that they need for the specific role. I let them know that if they do this on the front end and they set up the foundation for the interview, then they can really withdraw themselves from the process outside of the initial screen. By doing that, then they can leverage their team, they delegate it to them, and they can ultimately make the final decision upon a pre-interview wrap-up or a post-interview wrap-up. So it's really setting those expectations, letting them know that if they do the work on the front end, then it's going to end up paying dividends in the long run.
The other way to look at it too is this. If you're you're working across the business, you'll have some departments who actually lean into it and are like, yes, I want to work with recruiting. And if you have those managers who are just resisting, right? Because these guys are also going to be your partners in marketing and branding efforts. So you do want to win over as much of them as possible. So if you have those ones that are resisting it, then work with the ones that are leaning into it. And then when they see the success that the other managers are having it's kind of like the kid on the playground that, doesn't have the new tennis shoes, and then the whole fear of missing out starts to set in, and then they're going to come to you and they're going to be like, all right, well, let's have a conversation, because you've proven obviously success with these other departments, especially if it's other managers within their same division, right? That's a very powerful way for them to buy into what you're doing, right? Because especially, first and foremost, you have to start with, if you want them to be partners with you in your marketing and branding efforts, you've got to make sure that you have if you don't have a solid way, a solid operational process for finding and screening top talent, they're not going to care. They're not going to care about like some airy-fairy branding program that you want to do with them. So that's where you start first, right? But then you use that as your foundation to kind of get them enrolled in, wow, there are other things beyond, like I was talking about earlier, there are other things beyond just giving the recruiter a rec to fill. And they don't get that because they don't know what good looks like.
Hi, Irene Batista from Nexent. I run our talent acquisition department. So to kind of further your point, and it sounds petty, but my hiring managers, I ask them to submit their requests through our applicant tracking system. And if the format isn't right, I actually deny it and tell them to do it again. And again, it sounds petty, but I think there's a level
That
of
is so petty.
Exactly. Trust me, I'd be angry. But I think there's a level of engagement, and there's almost a psychological factor that helps them to buy in their accountability. They're willing to go back and enter in this requisition. Great. Buy-in, engagement. We have a better success rate when I have them input their job description and the qualifications for a position, rather than me entering in all that information, rather than them emailing it to me to an email abyss, right? Because they complain. Previously to my coming on board, they complained, oh, well, our requisitions aren't getting posted quick enough. Great, let's change the process. You have the access and the accountability to enter in your requisition. I can approve it, make some small edits to post it live to our career site. Boom, we have engagement. And I think that has really psychologically helped them to continue that engagement to fill that position. So that's really helped us because, I mean, engineers, they pretend, oh, we don't know how, it's so hard. I'm like, your engineering job is much harder than entering in a requisition. I'm pretty sure you can. I believe in you. Read the presentation that I've set forth. We can walk through it step by step. I'm more than happy to do that for you.
I think it's just to add on to that real quick, and then I know there's a question over here, but that's an example of the kinds of things that you do so that you can get them to a point where you can start having meaty conversations about like top of funnel, right? Because in fact, on my way here, I had one of the engineering managers email saying, hey, can we make a video to show to prospective candidates? They were not engaged in that way, even a year ago. So it's, this is the kind of relationship you build over time. It's not like you're going to go in. Some managers get it right off the bat, but most won't. And you have to get them to that point, right?
Hi, I'm Pradnya from Adapar, and I have a question regarding metrics and analytics. As a startup, have you used metrics and analytics to track how well or badly your teams are doing? What has worked for you guys and what hasn't?
So are we talking about like marketing analytics for talent marketing, or are we talking about performance analytics for the team?
Yeah, performance analytics for the team. So basically, do you guys track how many PS1s to hire? Do you track time to fill a position? Are these metrics that have helped you guys? Does it make sense for a startup to keep a track of these things? Because you have small teams and there's always larger volume to hire. So does this even make sense for a startup to kind of think about?
I think it absolutely makes sense. So first, it's important to understand that, well, I'll say this. Here's what we did. There are the metrics that the business that are important to the business, and then there are metrics that are important to us, right? The business just cares about progress to plan. That's really all they care about, where you're at with that. When I report on that to the business, I may use other things like time to fill or source quality or interview to offer ratio, right? But I don't talk about those every time I report on progress to plan. I use those as like trending topics. So one month I may talk about time to fill. The other month I may talk about, have a conversation about top of funnel because that just happens to be what's impacting progress to plan right now. That's business metrics. Performance metrics are, I think as a team, we focus on things like time to fill. We look at, sourcing activity, where they're sourcing from. But those are coaching conversations. They're not like, here's our one-on-one, and we're going to talk about, well, where's your time to fill at now, and why is it, why hasn't it gone down, or what have you. But it's, all right, what are we trying to accomplish with this particular business unit with respect to what the hiring plan is? And hey, I've noticed that, you're not getting as many candidates from this source. Have you thought about what's going on there, right? So those are the kinds of, the metrics conversations are more like coaching conversations. Now, leading into what we're talking about with marketing, right? Those are also within those performance metrics conversations because I don't have a dedicated marketing and branding person on my team. I have, well, that's not entirely true. I have one of my senior recruiters takes that on, and everybody takes it on to a degree. But when we have conversations about what we're doing around that, I remember my senior recruiter came to me the other day and she had an idea about doing something to increase employee engagement, right? Marketing X, Y, and Z. But I said, all right, well, how do you know that how are you going to measure that? And how will you know if you're successful? Those are the kind of, do you also want to have those kinds of conversations when you're doing your marketing and branding?
I love that. And I would ask, how do you measure the impact of employer branding for either of you?
Yeah, so I would say through the ad campaigns, specifically on LinkedIn, it's been great to see, click to view to application to interview to hire. I mean, you can do so many ratios. It's incredible. Plus, back to the question, it's application tracking systems make reporting so easy now. It's literally a click of the button, and you can filter it. So it's really a fundamental thing, regardless of size. You could have a 3-person startup. It still makes sense. I personally like to, I do some correlation things to, quality of hire by department, by team. Again, going back to performance discussions and seeing how you can improve your interview process. But for the branding specifically, it's been really interesting to look at our in-mail response rate with respect to influenced hires on LinkedIn. So we had a ton of influenced hires last year, and we had 20% in-mail response rate. But through the ad campaigns, we also noticed that we had a 63% in-mail response rate for anybody that was engaged with our brand. And we noticed that after we ran ads with LinkedIn. So it was a huge lift in in-mail. Again, not for all in-mails, just for the ones that were engaged with DemandBase, but that was a huge metric for us.
I think go ahead.
I'm going to say a quick question around, Matt Jordan from ForgeRock, just a couple of blocks down. You mentioned quality of hire. You have metrics around quality of hire, do you? I'll be really interested to hear about those.
Yeah, so essentially you can track quality of hire based on retention rate, right? So take a look at the amount of the specific managers that have hired folks and how long they've stayed on board. We ran a test to look at the number of hires and the length and retention for that specific employee with that manager. And we were able to look at some of the managers that might need a little more guidance with respect to coaching, one-on-one development. We look at a number of things, but I think those are some areas that, again, drive performance discussions across the company.
Do you take a different approach across the functions, or?
It really depends on from department by department, but it could be, is there a lead, is there a manager, or are they rolling up directly to a department head as well? It just depends.
I had one other question. Have you had to augment your approach from pre-IPO to now that you've floated?
That's a great question. Yes, and because as the company grew, we absolutely had to sort of change the way we were doing things because the hiring needs grew as the company grew, and so the one thing that we didn't do fast enough was implement a long-term top of funnel strategy, because what happened then is that we were for too long operating in that reactive mode. Now, we were structured in that once something opened up, we were very quick to jump on it, get a pipeline going, and get people in the process. But then it's different when you have constant top of funnel activity. You're always feeding the fire, and it changes the bandwidth for the recruiters, because then over time you start to have you can open things up and focus on being a better partner or consultant to the business, right? Because now you've set yourself up to not always be sourcing in a particular way, right, where you're always behind the eight ball, but it's a much more proactive approach where you have people queued, or you have a sourcing strategy that whether you don't even have to have a job posted, because you're already having candidates that are coming to you inquiring about whatever the opportunities are. And so one day I would love to see job postings go away, quite frankly. Yeah. And in the ad tech industry, it's not exclusive to us, but I know for our business, our needs change very quickly, and so I have a team of 5 FTEs that I can staff up very quickly. Last year, I staffed in 6 weeks. I went from 5 to 16. And we have that flexibility to expand and contract very quickly depending upon the needs of the business.
We have time for probably 1 or 2 more questions. In the back.
Hi, I'm Jackie. I'm wearing a few different hats here today. So I'm interested to hear, I do work with a lot of clients who've moved from a hiring manager or a hiring duo to the team in their decision making. And Tim, I'm interested to hear when you mentioned you have a lot more buy-in from the entire team regarding recruiting and referrals and what that looks like. So I'm interested to hear your thoughts on then what that does to the actual decision making, or what that might do if there's sort of differences between differences in values for particular candidates, and what that does with the overall decision.
Totally. So one example I would give is our data science team. So there was tremendous buy-in from the SVP of technology, to the point where we were at a standstill after our job postings. We couldn't get any candidates that were of quality. And what we did is we ended up creating a massive list of 400 candidates that we went through that he allocated out to the team, got their buy-in, had them pre-qualify, and we actually put them into 3 tiered categories. Tier 1, the SVP reached out. Tier 2, the team reached out with similar attributes like similar school or technology. Tier 3, the recruiting team reached out. Through that, we had a ton of data science interviews and a few hires. And naturally, I think the team felt super invested in the process, and I think loyal in return. And now we have a team of, I think, 8 or 9 data scientists. And that was a huge success for us, because we were literally a goose egg to having a ton of interviews while increasing the loyalty from the entire team. Yes.
Hi, could you elaborate a little bit more? Like, how did you get the senior VP of tech to invest and work together with you? Because I know that's a challenge amongst a lot of my clients.
Sure. For us specifically, we literally had 2 to 3 data scientists, and it was super important for him. he knew that if we didn't hire and we didn't bring on board more data science folks, he wasn't going to be able to get what he needed done. So we sat down. We had a pretty step-by-step approach to how we were going to attack a list and how we were going to go about the recruitment. It was easy to be able to add them to folders in LinkedIn. I know we're here, I'm not pitching the company, but I just, being able to add them to a folder, being able to show them the functionality, showing them how easy it was to engage with candidates and have the team review, it really made it a very simple process for everybody involved. So, you know, it's little work on the front end that goes a long way.
Thanks, guys. Okay, we're almost at time. I have a question that I did not. Oh, we have one more?
We had one more.
When do you think a startup should kick in university recruiting? For example, if you're an 80 or 90 people company, do you think university recruiting should make a major part of your recruiting process?
Yes. Yes. Here's what I'll say is that university recruiting is a whole different animal, right? There's and the thing to remember is that there's university recruiting and there's summer internships, right? They're different. What we did was we actually started off with a summer internship program. And I think that with smaller organizations, that's a good place to start. And you start engaging local universities, and that way, and again, building, that's part of your long-term pipeline strategy. It should be, right? But to get into like a whole university recruiting program, that's actually a full-time job. So to work towards that, I think an internship is a good place to start, because then you can start with a department like we did with engineering, where we said, all right, we'll start with engineering. And the first year we had a summer internship, 2014. We had, I think, 15 engineering students that year, and we hired 5 of them. And then that built on, even more the following year and after that. And then over time, as the business grows, you can start to make a business case for actually getting more resources to manage a full-blown university program. But I would start small.
Yeah, I agree with Brian. It depends on the positions. Interns are a great way to bring on board. Even like Path Forward's a returnship program for returning mothers, which is super impactful, and it's really helped us. We hired 3 of the 5. So I would say start small, know the positions you're working on. If they do require experience, university recruiting probably wouldn't be the best route.
Any other burning questions? Okay, well, we'll be around for the next half an hour. I actually want to squeeze in one little question that I didn't say I would be asking, which is if you had to summarize what has made you successful in attracting talent in 2 words or 1 sentence, what would it be? No, that's 1 word.
And you can't use the word LinkedIn.
2 words, ownership and experience. Take control of the process with the candidate and set expectations throughout the entire start to finish recruitment cycle. By doing so, you're going to be able to make sure that you can actually close a candidate even when they're shopping multiple offers. Experience, make sure you give candidates the white glove treatment. It is such a fundamental recruiting need. If you don't treat candidates with respect, they will not accept your offers. We learned that early on, that if we just do that one easy thing, once they're in the door, we can retain them. And we've been really successful as a result.
I would echo that, and I'd also add it's candidate experience, investing in your candidate experience, but also the hiring experience for the managers. Realize that getting their feedback on what they're doing and what would matter to them. If you build a great hiring experience for the managers and the panelists on the interview panels, again, they're going to be your ambassadors in whatever programs you want to put in place, right? Because then they're going to start to relate to the whole hiring experience differently than, oh, damn it, it's this, I got to hire people for my team again, which, you know, in the beginning, that's what it was like. It was like a chore, right? And it's a time suck for them. That's how they relate to it. But over time, right, you want to create a great hiring experience just like you want to create a great candidate experience. And that way they'll be your team. They'll be on your team in no time. Great.
Thank you guys for coming. Thank you to our panelists. Really appreciate what you had to share today.
Thanks.
Thanks so much.